Brilliant, fantastic. Well, team, before we get kicked underway, first and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land and the connections to land, sea, and community that we all meet on today. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to any Indigenous people present on today's call. So for those, hopefully you know what we're talking about today. Hopefully you haven't just stumbled across a Zoom link, because it might be very varied depending on where you've come from. But what we are talking about today is grabbing eyes and talking all about how to make scroll stopping videos. For those of you who did join our last session in whatever the previous month was, May, yeah, we're in June now. It can be tough to remember at this time of year. But we did talk about how to make scroll stopping images, but today it's all about video content. So we're going to be talking about a couple of key elements there. There will be a couple of elements that we chat about, which do have some similarity, which we do have to bring back to, but we're going to be talking all about video content today and how to stop people in their news feeds as they're scrolling, as they're ripping through, getting them to put their thumb down on that news feed and pay attention. For those of you who don't know me, who haven't joined, welcome. Joined one of our sessions before, welcome. My name is Gareth. I'm a social media trainer and strategist and an all-around social media nerd. A lot of emphasis on the nerd there. I'm also the social media lead at the Starlight Children's Foundation and one of the co-authors of the Diploma of Social Media Marketing. So welcome back if you've joined us previously. If this is your first time, welcome for the first, regardless of how you know about SMC and the different touch points that you have. Angela from Indonesia, welcome. Your favorite show is Stranger Things on Netflix. That's I gotta admit, I couldn't quite get through the first couple of it. It was a bit too weird for me, but then my mate's just like, absolutely get back into it, Gareth. And so I will. You've given me a bit of of encouragement there, Angela. So this is what we'll be looking at and stepping through in today's masterclass. We're going to talk about a few things before we start. So before we crack open the DSLR or our smartphones, whatever the case is, what are some things we need to consider when it comes to this scroll stopping content? We will then talk about recording and editing. So it is important, not that there's an old adage, it all comes out in the cutting room floor, and the editing of content is really important. But obviously it starts at recording. It starts at making sure you capture great content. Now, we're then going to also split up and talk about short form and long form video. We will focus a little bit more on short form because that is by nature the way that people typically will be scrolling through content. We're going to be talking about both those forms and how you can try to maximize that scroll stop and get people to pay attention to your content. Welcome, Melissa. I love Stranger Things too from SA. Fantastic. 1st of July. There we go. Watched last month. Oh, fantastic. Welcome back then. Also, before we dive in, hopefully I don't have to sell you too much on video, but I did want to talk about a couple of elements which really make video an incredibly powerful medium. Typically, video gets higher engagement. Engagement obviously is a really important fuel when it comes to algorithms. Obviously, it does depend on the platform. I'm not going to sit here and say that video is the absolute necessity for every single social media platform. However, it does typically get higher engagement. Naturally, because you've got more breadth, more chunkiness to the content, it will hold people's attention for longer. Think about how you scroll through your Instagram feed or your Facebook feed, particularly those platforms that have a mixture. And typically the ones that you spend a little bit more time on are the ones that are the videos, because they've got a little bit more depth to it. Absolutely great captions and complex images can hold people's attention, but generally video has that ability. Video is typically much more share worthy. Statistic, admittedly, team, I'm going to put a bit of an asterisk to this one because I did hear this from in 2017, and I haven't. That's 5 years ago, which is admittedly big asterisk. That's a long time in social media land. But a person from Facebook told me that 48% of video views come from shares. So that nearly half of the people at that time that were watching video content in their newsfeed had seen it because someone had shared it, which is massive because obviously that means that people are more willing to encourage others and people in their community to watch the video. But also that does actually give us a little bit of a challenge, because in some cases there's people who are watching our content who might not know anything about our brand, etc. One of the beautiful secret sauces when it comes to getting off that content treadmill is repurposing content. We'll chat about that very briefly today, but video typically is easy to repurpose. And by that we mean having typically a larger bank of content, dicing it up and utilizing it in different ways. So instead of just producing one video and clicking publish on social and sending it out to the to whichever platform, finding ways to cut it up, dice it up, and utilize it in different ways and distribute it so we've got more bang for our buck. And great return on investment. One thing where in a few experiments I've been doing lately is actually seeing that video is providing a lower cost per click when it comes to paid content on Facebook and Instagram, which blows my mind because typically we always used to say video doesn't drive clicks. Video drives views and engagements, but typically doesn't drive clicks. But we've really seen that trend bucking lately when you do create great content. So return on investment is there as well. One thing the video does better than anything is it brings your brand to life. It brings your products, your services, your connection with your community to life. The old adage, that a picture tells 1,000 words, where you tell a lot more in 30 seconds worth of video content, right? You can have much more immersive. You can build emotions and relations and all those sorts of things that really connect you with your audience. So it does allow you to transcend some of that standard sort of visual content. But also, as mentioned, also allows you to sort of build a bit more personality to your content outside of just static images and copy. Video allows you to sort of develop that and therefore the relationship with your audience in a much deeper and more meaningful way. Even with all these benefits of videos, they're still shared less frequently, than like I mentioned. So when it comes to your video content, it does get the value from the sharing, which is why you can begin to build that relationship. Now, one thing that's really important is I mentioned consistency. Now, I talk about consistency being the secret sauce in social across a variety of different concepts. First and foremost, you want to make sure that your video content is consistent from an internal point of view. So first and foremost, even basic things like the colors that you use and the text and font sizes, so any sort of graphics and supers that you have over the top, making sure they're consistent. One thing we used to say is you want to almost schedule an appointment with your audience. So regularity of your content as well, how regularly you're going to be able to, how regularly you're going to be publishing content plays in with making sure that there's consistency in those colors and fonts so that your content pops up in people's newsfeed. They recognize it. It's the same as why, you think about the Disney logo and how, whilst that's a little bit of a sidestep, how iconic that is, it grabs people's attention and makes sure it develops that interest in the content. Also, your personality. One of the things we will be talking about today is this concept of trends and how important that is, particularly for short form video and getting those scroll stopping videos right. And it is really important to think of trends, think of what is working, what your audience is paying attention to, what your community likes at this time. But it is also important to keep your personality consistent. In 2022, it can be really challenging to have that sort of a shiny object syndrome. You see something cool and you go, well, let's just do that. But you want to make sure that it is consistent with your brand. And that's why something like this, a brand identity canvas, is just so important to help you build that consistency from your brand voice and personality through to how your video content is going to look like, icons, infographics, even the talent that you might use. So are you going to be using particular people in your video content, or are you going to be using particular styles of stock video, and making sure that gets wound in with your font sizes and colors as well. They're really important. For anyone who's ever spoken to me about social media marketing, and I know we do have a few people that touch onto these masterclasses on the regular, you should know this, where I'm already going with this, but I think one thing that's incredibly important when it comes to conceiving, when it comes to ideating about your content, right through to before you hit that publish, is understanding what value your content provides. And we've always said in social since early doors in the early 20 teens, that you want to add value on social media, but it was always, a lot of people go, what does add value mean? What does it look like? How do you add value? And I want you to think about it with in these three buckets. You want to either educate, entertain, or inspire your audience. That is how you're going to add value to them. When we talk educate, I do not mean tell them about your product and your service and your brand and look, here's our CEO and he's been in the company for blah, blah, blah. But tell them something that's valuable. Tell them, provide information and your expertise in and around your sphere. Give something away for free is the way we used to say. What is some knowledge IP you can give away for free, because it's not as though they're going to go, great, cool, you give me a tip, we'll see you later. It's about building that relationship. Entertain. Entertainment content, particularly when we talk about some of the topics like when we talk about TikTok today, which has really brought entertainment content back to the fore on social. Entertaining is really just engaging your audience, finding ways to be amusing, providing industry commentary, or even just thought provoking, a way to start a conversation with your audience. And inspire. Inspiration content is so valuable. Inspirational content is one of the most shared forms of content on social media, because it creates and sparks such an emotion with individuals. So you could be sharing stories of relevant organizations or amazing individuals, maybe finding ways to tell even your customer stories or your client stories in really amazing and inspirational ways that aren't necessarily about selling. And that's a really important thing with these. We want to focus on adding value to educate, entertain, or inspire. They absolutely can do more than just one-on-one video. So don't say, hey Gareth, you told me you could only educate or entertain. The best type of content begins to interweave all of these different versions into the same format. So I really encourage it before you begin to properly ideate on your content, and definitely before you hit that publish. If it's not doing one of these three things, what are you really giving your audience? And the last element is persuade, and that's because social media marketing is about marketing. We still do want to try to persuade our audience, and that's a little bit more about what we talk about ourselves. It's a little bit more about our USPs, our unique selling points, all that sort of stuff that begins to tip people over the line. But that being said, even when you are trying to persuade people and try to encourage them to purchase your product or sign up to your service, find a way to embed one of the other values. Find a way to inspire them or entertain them or educate them. I love to always cast my mind back to, the sort of early 2000s, late 90s, where we literally watch TV shows about TV commercials, because some TV commercials were just so entertaining or so inspirational, and that was what helped persuade people. So you can't just go, this is our product and this is why it's so amazing. Make sure you find a way to bind in one of those other value props. Consistency, like I said, I will be saying consistency very consistently through today's session. We did talk about this in the last masterclass as well. As the idea is not to go viral. I mean, that being said, there is the possibility. I've worked with a brand, and I know people even who have gone viral on a platform like TikTok in the last 12 months, because it is a little bit more of a unique platform. But the goal should not be viral. The goal is it's amazing when it does. It's the absolute pudding at the end of our meal. But realistically, what we should be focusing on is our own consistency and adding value. Now, once again, going back to adding value and that consistency, is the only way you can know what will entertain, educate, or inspire your audience is knowing who they are, and that is just so important when it comes to creating great video content. And we'll talk about exactly why in 2 months as well. Now, I did touch on repurposing earlier, and it's a really important thing to think about before you get started. So before you start recording, before you start even writing a script, I'd encourage you to think about how you may repurpose content, and also how you might batch produce content. Consistently, when there are surveys done of CMOs, so Chief Marketing Officers in Australia, consistently in the top 3 challenges that they face on social media marketing, consistently one of those is usually content volume. And that's one of the challenges for a lot of brands, particularly even when you begin to think about those that might have the huge budget or the internal skill sets. And so thinking about how you can repurpose content. For us here at SMC, one thing we quite often focus on is writing a really large, really long, lengthy, and valuable, SEO orientated blog. That's what we first start with, but we create that with the idea that we are going to turn that into a long form video. And then not only that, but we also create that knowing that we are going to turn that long form video into a variety and a multitude of much shorter, scroll stopping bits of video content. As I mentioned, video is a lot easier to repurpose than other forms of content, because quite often it just comes out in the editing. But the more that you can begin to think about how you're going to repurpose your video content at the beginning, the more effective you'll be at creating great content, create great content that is consistent with everything we talked about on that brand value, but also making sure that you can make it scroll stopping or thumb stopping, as we say. Here's even just an example, which one of our videographers grabbed a quick screenshot about. One of the longer form videos, and he's gone, these are some of the marks where I'm going to pull out a 10-second video for the Facebook feed, a 5-second Instagram story, and a 12-second Instagram feed post. And so looking at that lengthy bit of content, identifying here are the parts which we're going to slice up, dice up, and take out and distribute on other platforms. So regardless of how you're going about it, I think it's really important to think about how you can have a lens of repurposing content. But regardless of whether you're going to create a long form video piece or whatever the case may be, really do think about bulk producing your content. That way you can post consistently so that you don't knock out 3 or 4 videos in the next couple of weeks and then go silent for 1 or 2 months. That consistency is really important in building that relationship with your audience. So the recording and editing, there's, whilst it's a little bit of the hygiene element, there's some really important things when it comes to how we can make scroll stopping content and making sure that we are well ahead of the game when it comes to both the recording and element and editing part of View. One thing is when it comes to your filming of content, there's a couple of things that we always want to consider and make sure that we've got correct with our video content. Typically, they fall into 3 buckets when we're recording. We have great audio, so you want to be able to hear people really, really well. There's nothing worse than people very, very soft. Crackly or outside noise. We want to make sure that there's stability in the video as well. It's not bouncing around. It's not some sort of video that would be shown on the 7 o'clock news, recorded by someone at a petrol station. And the last thing we want to make sure is lighting as well. So when you're recording or you're filming your content, consider the audio, consider the lighting, and consider the stability. These are 3 things you really need to make sure of. Particularly when we've begun to think about short form video content now, we have seen, and we'll talk about this in a lot more detail in the short form section, but smartphone devices are absolutely fantastic at creating and capturing content. Like I mentioned, audio, making sure you have an external mic to grab all that quality conversation, quality audio. The microphones on your standard smartphones, what they call an omnidirectional microphone, which means it picks up noise from all around you, which is why when you're talking to your mum on the phone, you can hear the car go past and a truck honking in the background, and it is deafening. And so you want to make sure you get good audio. You can get these sort of gimbal things which allow you to have very stable video content if you are walking around capturing that content, and consider making sure you've got good lighting. Whilst ring lights typically aren't one of the best forms of lighting for recording video, funnily enough, on platforms like Instagram Reels and TikToks, God, that made me sound old mispronouncing that, didn't it? Oh, goodness. Let's take a moment for my younger self. But what's really interesting is that the ring lights are almost iconic in the way they sort of illuminate, and so they actually look quite authentic on the platform. And it's a really bit of a strange one that we'll talk about in a moment. We'll cover this concept of like lo-fi content. But it's really interesting that a ring light that doesn't usually provide outstanding illumination for whoever's talking in the video or what you're showing, it has almost become iconic with some of those very thumb-stopping platforms like TikTok, like Instagram Reels. I won't go through this, but when it comes to capturing content on a DSLR, kit up. You don't have to go the whole 9 straight away, and it really does depend on your audience and how you're going to be looking at producing content. But consider a variety of different equipment and ways you can go about, because as mentioned, the quality is really important. The time and investment you spend in getting great equipment and capturing content correctly eliminates a lot of the time off the back end when it comes to trying to edit your content together. Now, this has become possibly one of the more important concepts when we discuss scroll stopping content or scroll stopping video content in 2022. And this is this idea of portrait versus landscape. A lot of what we talk today has actually been driven out by changes on TikTok. But that being said, portrait video or vertical video has been around for quite a period of time. In fact, The Guardian at one stage moved all their Facebook content, all their Facebook video content in Australia to vertical video. And that's back in like 2016, 2017. It's really important that when you are beginning to create that create video content, work out which platforms you are going to be sharing it on. The reason we want to consider portrait versus landscape is For those people who are using platforms that have a news feed, so they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they're holding their device in a vertical way as they're scrolling through. And what portrait/vertical video does really well is it fills up the entire screen. So you think about stories, you think about reels and TikToks, and it takes up that entire screen. It takes up the full page spread, as we used to say. Obviously, though, if you are sharing content to YouTube, or if you are using, say, square videos for Instagram and Facebook newsfeed content, then it's important to think about when you are capturing your content, how are you going to possibly reproduce it for different platforms? You can either go for a one-shot variety where you try to get both a vertical and a landscape or a square shot in the one go, or even having two devices when you're recording content for this. But it is really important. We are seeing this absolute rise in vertical video and the value of it as well. So content in this sort of 9:16. TikTok really has changed, in particular in the last year and a half, the video consumption across social media platforms. It's interesting as well with Instagram. Instagram has not only deployed Reels, they came out in August 2020, I think it was, but they are beginning to play around with this idea of turning their newsfeed vertical. So there are screenshots of where they've sort of trialed this, where even existing square images come through in that vertical format that mirrors that Reels and that TikTok experience. And that's driven by the success. If you think the two biggest platforms that threatened Instagram/Facebook over the last 5 or 6 years, it was Snapchat and it was TikTok, which is why vertical stories and vertical reels are really important to the platform. So it'd be very interesting to see how that sort of plays out. Some of the screenshots make that content look really interesting, but considering how vertical video will play into your mix. One thing as well is when it comes to creating great content, if you don't have everything, there are great stock videos out there. There are free tools like Pexels and Unsplash where you can source, I'll say, decent quality stock videos. So stock videos, and they're free, they're royalty free, so you can utilize them without paying for that content to supplement what you've already got. That being said, there's not a huge library of free content out there from a stock video point of view. So if you do want really amazing stuff, sometimes you might need to pay for even better stock video. As an example, I worked with a client that was effectively a travel organization aiming to bring people to Vietnam. Obviously, this is pre-COVID, as you can imagine. And we were looking for amazing stock videos on some of those free platforms, and we just came up with nothing. So we did absolutely have to open our wallet and pay for some really great video content of Halong Bay, etc. Whilst original content is by far and away the best because it's going back to that consistency, that brand canvas, right? It's on point, it's using your colors, and it's bespoke. It's made for a reason. Stock videos can still be a great way to supplement that style of content. And like I mentioned, editing is so important to creating scroll stopping content. Both when we think about that, quite often the way we package, and I'll talk about this in 2 moments, we think about the structure and the way that we put our content into the newsfeed. But a lot of that sort of shuffling and stitching together of the content comes in this editing stage. There's obviously a variety of different forms of editing tools out there. Canva, I just got a notification yesterday when I logged into my beautiful Canva account. It said something along the lines, I didn't have time to pay too much attention because I was trying to create a meme with my friend very, very quickly. So priorities, but they've just launched a variety of new video templates, which allow people to create even more immersive video content in that platform. So chef's kiss, Canva is absolutely incredible. There's a variety of different tools that you can utilize. Some are also even focused on this idea of repurposing. There are ones out there using AI where basically you put in your 5-6 minute long video and it'll begin to use artificial intelligence to work out where are some of the really cool, awesome short vox pops that they can extract for that shorter video content that might really sing out in people's newsfeed. When it comes to which video editing software, we always encourage start with something simple and basic, like a Canva, like an iMovie, if you are new to this concept, before you start investing in sort of heavier and more weighty bits of video editing software. The best still are platforms like the Adobe Suite because they give you so much breadth of power. However, that being said, and I'll talk more about lo-fi in a moment, we don't necessarily need to create the most ridiculously polished videos these days. It doesn't need to be a Spielberg masterpiece. In fact, sometimes the idea of this lo-fi content can be even more scroll stopping than some of the more polished and honed in video content. But I'd love to throw up to you guys. What is jump in the chat? Is there any video editing software or apps that you're already using? What's good about them? What's bad about them? Would you encourage their use? So feel free to jump into the chat. Give us a bit of a yell as to what video editing software you're currently using or trialing out, and what you're finding value from. Personally, on my personal laptop, I've got a tool called Mavave, which is, I'm a PC user. I'm like one of the few people in social media that use an Android phone and a PC device. So it's very similar to iMovie. Melanie, you've got love. Oh, sorry, that's moving. Loving. Goodness me, the chat is kicking all of a sudden. Loving using BeatLeap app for Reels. Fantastic. I'm going to check that out myself now. Libertad, you've got you use the Adobe Suite Premiere Pro. Fantastic. So you've got that skill set there, which is amazing. Amazing skill set to have for sure. Katie, I struggle through editing on the phone direct for Reels. It is a bit fiddly, and we'll talk about that in a moment. It is amazing how powerful, particularly the TikTok editor is. But that being said, there are other ways we can sort of get around it. Sharon, Canva all the way on PC. Love it. There we go. Canva again from Anash. Sorry, Anash. Welcome. Good to see you. Absolutely love it. Haven't used it as much for videos. Fantastic. Yeah, I think it's beginning to get there with videos. So really exciting there. Nikki, you're on Adobe Premiere Elements. Purchase one license, no ongoing fee. Here we go. I thought it was an ongoing fee for that one. The more you know, but definitely Canva as well. Well, gee, here we go. For someone wanting to make a KinoMaster. Cool. Thanks for that, Carlos. Interesting. Adobe Premiere and Canva, and it's not Carlos, it was some Ada, I think it was, who's dialing in on that one from Perth. Canva as well, there we go. CapCut for mobile videos from Vincent. Yeah, there's also Quick, which I believe, QUIK, which is owned by GoPro, and so obviously very similar, all about that mobile video, very quick to produce. And Catherine tried Video Pad. Oh my God, this is so many these days. It's incredible. For the first time, you're only a beginner, would love to more. Absolutely. With Premiere Pro, I think get a bit of a feel for the idea of editing before diving into it, because otherwise I feel like when you dive into some of those tools like Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro, and you haven't sort of got the basics around how to format, my God, it could be inundating for sure. InShot for IG video, love that there. Sometimes you use very simple and free on your phone. Splice, there we go. Fantastic variety. Absolutely. It's amazing some of the software that comes on devices these days. I think it's pronounced Vesco. That's how I say it, but VSCO. Love that one, Angela, as well. And you've got a few that you're using there, which is great. Quite the gamut. And Melanie, love you in Premiere Pro. There we go. There is a platform called Affinity, and it's got very similar features to the Adobe Suite at a fraction of the price, like 1.6. One of my video mates, he suggested that, although the problem is obviously if you're working with other people and other bits of content, it can be hard because Adobe is typically the way they save the files is that sort of industry standard. Camtasia, great one for screen recording as well. And iMovie from a couple, fantastic, love it, team. So, geez, you've really run the gamut there. You had me really working, going through everything. So I want to start talking about short form video now, and it is such I guess not even a trend. It's becoming the big way that we consume video, particularly on social media. One of the reasons is we have become goldfish. So we talk about the fact that a goldfish has got a attention span of 8 seconds, and it's very similar with humans. There was actually a study done in a Canadian university, and they said that the attention span from your average adult has gone from 12 seconds to 8. And that's why short form video does make a lot of sense. What was really interesting though in that study, they actually found that people's ability to consume and adopt content as well, to actually take it on board, has increased though. And I think part of that is because we are getting better at telling visual stories, because it is easier to create video and it is more cost effective than when I first started in social media marketing, where video was an incredibly expensive idea. But we really have seen this rise of short form video, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years. If we just have a quick look at this, so we're just sort of scattered across, got video links down there on the bottom. production quality up there on the left-hand side, the other axis. You know, your YouTube, typically the longer video content, typically higher production quality as well. What we're seeing is down here in this sort of bottom left area, the increase in consumption of shorter content, but typically lower production quality. And that's what you've heard me use the term lo-fi or low fidelity. Basically, that's content that doesn't look as polished. And we're seeing, obviously, naturally, brands using Snapchat and stories, and it's not content that has gone through Adobe Premiere Elements. It's stuff that's being, in a lot of cases, recorded directly from the phone and uploaded. And we're seeing that come through with brands. And I think there's a couple of great reasons why. One is it's cheaper and easier, but two, it adds that little bit of authenticity to your brand message as well. But obviously in there as well, we've got Reels and TikTok, which are really, I apologize for the terrible puns I'll make today, but really taking off. We're incorporate YouTube Shorts in there as well. But these shorter form video content pieces. Now, when I talk short form video team, there's a couple of definitions. When some people say 10 minutes and lower, is short form video to me is 1 minute and lower. 60 seconds or below is short form, something that really grabs people's attention. As mentioned, if you think about where people are spending the bulk of their time these days, when people are spending a huge amount of their time consuming content and absolutely video content on social, and it is in that bottom left. It is in IG stories, Reels, TikToks. TikTok has come out and said that in Australia, the average daily user spends 83 minutes on the platform. That's enormous. And they're not consuming not typically consuming really lengthy content. They've only just started to unveil 3 and soon 10-minute videos on the platform, but it's typically that shorter, sharper video content and of a lower production quality. So consider how short form is going to play into your scroll stopping content. And I want to talk through this very quickly, but there was a survey by Animoto, and they found that 60%, well, 59.9% of people indicated that a video length being too long would deter them from watching. Now, obviously, too long. What does too long mean? Now, that's a really important thing. It's something that will flavor a few of the things we talk about in the rest of the session, is that too long is based on the value proposition of that content. And obviously, think about it, when people are scrolling through, your average Australian scrolls through 70 meters of Facebook a day. So if you want to stop them scrolling, as they go through, they're going to see how long that video piece is, right? They're going to very, very quickly look and go, well, this is a video of XYZ and it's 3 minutes long. Oof, that's a long investment. And so that's why this short form video content is, we're seeing a bigger rise, because we can not only provide shorter, sharper, pithier bits of content. That's also great for us as well, because it means that, if we are repurposing content, we've typically got a larger volume of posts as well, which allow us to get that shorter depth of engagement. So it is important to really consider the length of your videos. And this is where, I'll chat to it a little bit later as well, it is all about quality and not quantity when it comes to video length. Now, one of the key things for any thumb-stopping content, when we're talking about video, particularly for these feed-based platforms, so when we've got a news feed, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc., you got 3 seconds, probably even less these days. I reckon you got 2 seconds on Reels and TikTok. Talk about why in a moment. You got 3 seconds to grab their attention. So if you want to create a scroll-stopping video, then you really need to think about how amazing your first 3 seconds are. You think about typically, when you might create YouTube content, or how we might have created video content previously. Hi, my name's Gareth. In the next couple of minutes, I'm going to talk to you about your audience is gone. They don't care about who you are and what you are. They really want you to grab their attention. And that's what we really need to do. One really important part about that, I'll leverage back on this a little bit later as well, is understand what other type of content your audience is consuming, to be able to follow trends and tropes so you can grab your audience's attention. But you've got 3 seconds. So when you are either storyboarding and thinking about the content, or you are in Adobe or in Canva and you're trying to create that content and edit it together, 3 seconds got to be amazing. Now, quite often, when people say, oh, how do you do that? Create intrigue. So maybe it's like, as a great example, team, like think about this. We're talking about a TV series earlier. You remember when you're watching that episode of a cop show, you see a person running down a dark alley, they're sprinting down, they're bouncing off the walls, and they trip and fall over, they roll onto their back, and the gun's put in their face, and then it just goes 3 weeks earlier. That's an idea, a bit of a trope we call is close to the end in mind. And so basically what they're doing is they're trying to grab your intrigue to continue to watch this episode of this cop drama by going, how does that character get in that situation? And then they tell the rest of the narrative in a chronological order. What that does, like I mentioned, grabs their attention. It's like, oh, that's really amazing. Well, that's cool. But also adds context to everything else that you say after that. So think about that first 3 seconds. Start with an impressive percentage. Start with an anecdote. Find the emotional or pain point that you would really connect with your audience. Or something humorous. Once again, going back to that adding value, making sure that you can really portray that in that first 3 seconds. Okay, you've been battling with the business to have them ditch the opening. Oh, yeah, absolutely. At the opening logo animation, I win more often than, yeah, absolutely. I can't express, like, that was the thing, like, particularly some of those ones where someone had paid a couple of grand for one of those weird animated logos going back, and it took like 5 or 6 seconds. You're like, oh my God, they're so far away by now. And I couldn't agree more. It's such a challenge, even to the point where I worked with a production house a while ago, and you think about all films and what did they typically start with when they advertised on TV, and it was the rating. And I don't believe they had to have, remember, they didn't have to have that rating at the front, but they always did, because that was how they did it. You think about it, if you're scrolling through and you just see the rating like, up or keep going. And so it was about how can we make sure that we still adhere to regulations, but you still got to grab people's attention in the newsfeed. Yeah, so there we go. Brilliant. As I mentioned, TikTok has changed so much when it comes to how we consume video content of late. Can't sort of talk about TikTok without a little bit of a throwback to Vine. Vine was a platform that Twitter bought and did nothing with, RIP. But it was all about quick jokes and punchlines, short skits in that really limited time frame. You actually still see some of this content get shared on TikTok, actually. But we've really seen that as a resurgence on TikTok. There's a lot of in-app filters and effects. One of the things that, once again, going from the idea of editing your video using a software and in the platform itself, is that they do have a lot of effects and filters, both on Reels, Shorts, and TikTok, that make your content seem a lot more native on the platform, because it looks like the content from the creators and the friends that they're following. It does obviously allow slightly longer lengths than Vine, not limited at 6 seconds, but it really is, it does still favor quick, valuable content. So getting to the point and providing your audience with that really valuable content. Like I mentioned, typically we're talking about content here that is under 60 seconds. But when it comes to the value of the way that you can, when it comes to the value of short form content, is obviously you can increase the frequency of content that you are sharing. Also with shorter content, there's a much longer chance, much higher chance rather, that they'll be rewatching that they'll actually be playing it through. Video completion is a massive element for any social media platform. So I mentioned earlier, quality over quantity when it comes to video length. Get myself tongue-tied, aren't I? And your goal when it comes to any video content, short or long, starting with a punch, but you want to make sure people complete that video. And that's one of those great things about short form video. Don't be afraid to create 15 and 20-second video content, and do it thematically, because that will increase your audience retention and also the value of your content. So out of interest, I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat. Have you used TikTok Shorts or Reels before from a marketing point of view? Actually, if you're TikTok famous, love to hear from you in the chat box as well. And from that point of view, what are your favorite short form video types that are shared on the platform? Maybe there's a particular creator that you love, that you follow their content. There's I'm going to give what I'd almost call him a TikTok influencer. He's got like 3 million followers, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name. Some of you might not, but basically he does these really short videos where he addresses cultural misconceptions and historic misconceptions, and he always starts off with someone else's content and then breaks in with this "hello, my friend," in this really deep, amazing voice. And once again, it's a really unique thing, because based on the consistency of his content, what's about to happen. You know the value of the content you're going to get. It's going to be a short 1 minute, very interesting piece. Has anyone used TikTok's shorts or reels before? Anyone experimented with them from a brand point of view at the moment? I can think of a few brands which are doing a decent job, particularly on different platforms at the moment. So it's really interesting. What are your favorite types of that short form video content? Let me tell you, you've got favorite is Reels right now, having trouble when it comes to booster content. Yeah, that's really interesting about like the amplification of Reels at the moment. Don't be too disheartened because I think they're trying to work the bugs out at the moment. As I mentioned, Adam Masari from Instagram, so he's the head of Instagram, has come out and he said that is what they're focusing on. It's allowing you to do pics but not videos. It's very strange, yeah. But watch your space because they are focusing on Reels. They're focusing on video first, and so when they do that, the advertising dollars don't follow too far later. Carlos, Hader, you've ripped up a few reels there. Nikki, total beginner, but only on Facebook and Insta, representing a community bank. Yeah, fantastic. And once again, like we've talked about, I guess, the TikTokification of content, but short form video is still important with your square content. So your Facebook and Instagram newsfeed, particularly, like I said, nearly half of it is a dated caveat. Half of all video views come from shares, but that first 3 seconds on Facebook is really important too, because if people are sharing your video content, they might not know about your brand, etc. Yeah. Katie, Reels have been a bit hard for the day job. Yeah, completely understand that. You had some good success with your side hustle Reels. Fantastic. They do typically get an extra bit of juice from the Instagram algorithm at the moment. Catherine, IG Reels just for your personal as well. More followers for the moment. Not familiar with the platform for you, Ada. Yeah, fantastic. And actually, yes, for Reels, for branding, and TikTok for fun. Beautiful. Loving TikTok as well. It's fun and easy to use. Absolutely. I think, and I mentioned the editing tools in there, and it does make even things like that voice to text. I'm seeing more and more brands using the in-platform voice to text because it feels authentic. It's native on the platform, and so it works well. One thing, even if you're not deploying your strategy on TikTok at the moment, if you don't have a brand presence there, but you are dabbling in, say, Reels, one thing we're seeing is that the trends from TikTok are making their way across into Instagram. One other really important thing about that sort of scroll stuff, I've sort of touched on it already, is this idea of audio. And that sounds so strange, but for so many years when it came to video content, we threw out the idea of audio because on Facebook and Instagram at the time, only about 8% of videos were viewed with the sound on. TikTok now is a sound on platform. As a result, the last stat I heard was that with Instagram, 2/3 of videos are viewed with the sound on. So that's really changed the way. So thinking about the audio content you've got there is more important than it ever has been. Alan, yep, build a few TikTok strategies for a few overseas clients. Love that. Sounds great. Angela, TikTok and Reels, because I use them on a daily basis, but TikTok is your fave. Even though you don't have many followers, all good. I'm trying to get my dog TikTok famous. It'll happen. We'll get there. But if you also use popular audio and hashtags, beautiful. You've almost jumped on that point there. That's fantastic. Is that using those trending elements is valuable because it helps serve that. If your audience is consuming a particular sound on TikTok or on Reels, they are more likely to see a video clip using a video clip. They're more likely to see a piece of content using that sound. So that's why being aware of these ideas of what trends are kicking, not just by way of themes, but also using those trending sounds is so valuable. And so it's very different to, like I mentioned, how we used to think about video for social, because audio has come full circle. Bridie, use for fun, not posted. Enjoy watching short educational TikToks. Love it. Fantastic. Brilliant. And as mentioned, team, short form video absolutely still exists in outside of Reels and TikToks. We're talking about the Facebook and the Instagram newsfeed. I put a bit of a grain of salt with this, but variety of different ideas. I'll leave this up here for 2 moments, just to possibly think about anything that might really spark a little bit of creative juice in your areas. One thing is, particularly with those forms of short. One thing that I found, which was very interesting, that Adam Masari said on from Instagram point of view the other day, was that he got questioned about whether or not they were going to include a sharing button. So now you can share content very quickly and easily on Facebook, and on TikTok you can duet and all that sort of stuff, and on LinkedIn and Twitter you can retweet and share. So I don't hold me to this team, but I reckon there's going to be a sharing feature on Instagram in the not too distant future. At the moment, all we can do is share a post to our IG stories, but watch this space, because when it comes to things like trends, when it comes to things like duetting and engaging with your audience, that sharing is a really valuable part to be part of your way to be part of your community. How-tos are still part of that utility educational content, still incredibly valuable, but perhaps any of the ideas here might spark a little bit of creativity as to how you might deploy some of your shorter form content. I won't spend a huge amount of time on this. The main reason being, get in there and play around with it. If you are going to be using any of the actual platforms like IG Reels, like TikTok, and like YouTube Shorts, is they have this amazing in-app editing. There's a variety of different things, but obviously you can record directly from it and upload, add music and sounds. Now, that can be a little bit tricky. Going back to promoting Reels, so company pages, so what we would typically have, generally can't advertise content if it's not using advertise Reels if they're not using original content. So if you are using a sound or something like that, you can't promote your content on the platform. So that is one challenge when it comes to that paid side. But effects, like I mentioned, sounds and effects are really important, because as people are scrolling through, like I mentioned, you've got that 3 seconds. Those sorts of things can quite often effectively deliver what we call a similar story with a twist. They might hear that particular sound from TikTok or Instagram, and they go, "Oh, I know this trend. I wonder where they're going." Or they might, you might see a particular stitch or intro video, and so those sorts of things are really valuable to get people's attention as they go through. Obviously, in some of them, you can do things like add different stickers and questions. Text, like I said, using that voice to text on the platform is really powerful for starters. That being said, use it consistently. If you are going to be doing that, like I said, consistency is the secret sauce to social. So make sure when it comes to how you're going to go about editing your content, you are consistent. You can add font styles, you can do voiceovers and that sort of side of things. Obviously adjust the volume, etc. Sounds, filtered stickers. But the really important thing about this is that this in-app editing allows your content to look native and authentic. And that is going to increase the likelihood of people stopping and paying attention to it. Like I mentioned, particularly younger audiences, but I think generally people these nowadays are really great at, they've got a great marketing sniffer meter. They can pick up on very finely tuned marketing content, and they want to see engaging content. So making sure it looks native. I'll give a quick image example, which I believe I gave in the last session, but I used to always stop and pay attention to this ad. It was from an educational organization that they delivered an MBA. I wasn't interested in doing an MBA because I wasn't going back after doing my bachelor's. But when I was scrolling through, I always stopped on it. The reason was because it was a really average quality photo that was obviously taken with just, point and shoot camera. And it had a picture of a girl graduating. There was a boyfriend next to her and her parents. Every single time I was scrolling by, and I thought it was a photo of one of my friends graduating. Each time I scrolled past it, I went, "Oh, which one of my friends just graduated?" And it got me every damn time. And that's why having authentic and native looking content really does help people pay attention to the newsfeed and stop that scroll. Got a couple of where did we sort of leave off? Here's a fun posted. Enjoy watching. Oh no, we covered that one on the environment, etc. What about the music we paid for with rights? So yeah, absolutely. So if you've got paid for content, you can. It's more so when you're using the tools like on Reels, and you're using the library and the sounds that are on the platform, because they will have rights attached to them. If you've paid for them and you've incorporated them into your video, you are good to go. As I mentioned earlier, audio has become such an important part of getting people to stop scrolling. Only a third of IG videos now are watched without sound. TikTok, literally, they refer to themselves as a sound first platform. So it's always important to understand how the platforms consider themselves when it comes to their part in the social media environment, what they offer their audience, because that tends to indicate how that algorithm will play and everything like that. But sound has become massive. So making sure that, yes, your audio is great regardless, but consider things like those trending sounds that can get people to stop scrolling when you are flicking through. One thing that's really interesting in the way that Instagram is looking to go with their news feed, and they've already gone with Reels, and TikTok has sort of got that experience, and so does YouTube Shorts, is that when you are scrolling, it is just one post on the screen at a time. And so you're not scrolling through your news feed as you would be on a Facebook or Twitter, but you're flicking to the next one. And so you have their immediate attention, but like I said, you've got that 2 to 3 seconds. So using audio and tropes to grab their attention is really thoroughly important. I think to that point as well, be a consumer, first when it comes to social media platforms. I like to, this is one of the fun parts of my job because, when people are just like, hey, did you just spend like 60 minutes scrolling through social? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing research. You do need to be a consumer first and understand what type of content is not necessarily trending, what people are consuming. Are there particular tropes or ways of going about creating content that is garnering more engagement? Check out your competitors, check out similar organizations that are doing well, whether locally, overseas, and go, great, what is it so good about their video content? If they've got decent engagement, things like that, why are they winning that pool? So absolutely be a consumer first. And like I mentioned, even for those who might not be deploying your strategy on TikTok, but you are on, say, Instagram and Facebook, a lot of the trends are coming from TikTok at the moment, and they're probably lasting, I reckon in most cases, 1 to 2 weeks. So it's pretty rapid in that regard. Facebook has now incorporated Instagram Reels in the newsfeed. So you might have noticed this, that you can see as you scroll through, you may see Reels that have been shared on Instagram that are also visible on Facebook. Only a matter of time, team, before they incorporate Reels into the Facebook newsfeed. You can upload them just as you do on Instagram. And when that happens, I will bet my bottom dollar that they will also put a bit of an algorithmic boost behind that. They'll push that. So that's why, not to hammer home in it, but vertical is becoming so valuable and important. Melanie, how can you work around this when it comes to scheduling a week or two in advance? Beautiful, love that. That's a really, really valid question. I think there's 2 parts to that. I think that's where understanding your going back on your brand canvas and things like that is that, for starters, actually, just wait. There we go. Sorry, let me come back to that because I sort of had some points here. So stay true to yourself when it comes to things like trends. Stick with content that feels natural. If there is a trend, and a lot of the trends that do go around are a little bit irreverent, quite often a little bit tongue-in-cheek, sometimes risque, and it's possibly not where you want to get your brand near. So make sure that you are sticking to content that feels natural and is in line with your brand strategy. Because there's no sense jumping on a trend if it's not homogenous. We're seeing so many brands just destroy themselves on social because they've jumped onto a trend and it doesn't match. And I won't bring up any examples, but I've got some great ones up here. Authenticity is everything. So to that point, Melanie, like you said, really important to have your own consistent content and jump on those trends if it is authentic to your brand. If you do see that marriage between what you're looking at producing and how it might work out. And that being said, you might have something that's scheduled 2 weeks in advance, or you might have some content you're producing at the moment and sort of more in the not too distant future. And maybe you hear a sound on TikTok, or maybe there's a trend or a stitch, whatever the case is, and you go, oof, we've got something that works perfect for that. So we do need to be agile at the moment. It's not 100% necessary, but if you can, and you've got something that works really well with it, then absolutely. And like I said, once your video gets a response built off it, engagement is massive. So making sure that you draw people back with the engagement on as part of your community management is just so valuable. Awesome, team. Now I'll wrap up very quickly talking about long form video content. The main reason we're not spending as much time on long form is that when we're talking about scrolling typically happens on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. Whereas long form video typically has its home on a platform like YouTube, like Vimeo, like your website, etc. So it's typically more search orientated. However, people are still looking for it. People are still scrolling through stuff. So let's talk about how to make sure you stop that scroll and grab people's attention with your video content. Here's one I prepared earlier. Like I mentioned, people are deterred by longer videos that are longer than they perceive the value. So if you've got a video that's, yeah, you've got an automotive business and you've got a video about how to change your spark plugs in 3 easy steps, and your video is like 25 minutes long, people are going to go, oof, seems like a lot of waffle. I don't know. I really shouldn't have given that example because I don't know how to change a spark plug. But it's really important when you think about the value you provide your audience is you want to make sure you think about the length of time and how you then language up. That's why obviously the first part of your video is so important. What is the perfect length to have good engagement? I don't think there is a perfect length. That being said, I think it's about how you utilize. What's more important than the perfect length to it? Let's quickly first go back and talk about engagement. So engagement, obviously, on most platforms, we think of likes, comments, and shares. One thing which is the big focus of any platform that shares video content now, so TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, etc., their biggest concept of engagement is video completion. So, yeah, it's great to get likes on your post, but if you've got 10,000 likes on a YouTube video, but the average video completion is like 3%, they're not going to show it to more people. So video completion is the most important part. And so that's where you've really got to marry it with, if you think about the title of your video, the length of it, and the value proposition you've designed, it's got to be, and that's where, do a bit of research and see what similar bits of content are like. So what makes great long form video from a scroll stopping point of view? A catchy title, absolutely. And to that point, SEO is important. Even Instagram, SEO is important for search. Well, your search key terms are really becoming more important. They've actually said that there are more people searching on Instagram than ever before. Visually engaging from the get-go, having nice visual content, a stellar intro. Like we said, that first 3 seconds, yeah, it's probably about the first 15 seconds when you consider YouTube content. You've got to have that great intro that builds that intrigue and gets people to pay attention. To that point, clear value. I'm watching this video. What am I going to get about it? What am I going to be entertained, educated, inspired, and what sort of value am I going to get from watching this X second long video? And also a great thumbnail. When people are searching or scrolling through, even if they're scrolling through Google results, right, and your thumbnail pops up, that is going to be really important to getting people to engage with your content. And just to wrap up a couple of things when it comes to long form, have a great script. Regardless of how you're going to do it, make sure you've what type of content you're doing. You're going to want to do one of two things: have an amazing script or an amazing storyboard, or both. A great script allows you to make sure that you are on point, that you deliver all the value you want to. You are going to spend less time in the recording studio, less time ripping it together in the editing side of things. You'll share your brand story. You'll be able to segment your market more effectively. Make sure you understand what you're about to say in front of a camera before you get there. And so to that point, first off, purpose. So what value you're offering. Start with a hook. Like I said, that's that first 3 seconds we talked about earlier. Mind-blowing statistic, cool anecdote, thought-provoking question. Build your intro. Who are, why people should pay attention to you, the body or the crux, the main meat of your message, and then finally write your conclusion and call to action. So make sure you have a good script before you jump in front of a camera, or else you are going to spend a lot of time doing not an awful lot. And also storyboarding. Now, this might also be valuable when it comes to producing great short video content, but effectively understanding a visual representation of how your scenes and ideas are going to get stitched together. This is why some of the best examples of if you are going to be even recording, say, in YouTube Shorts or editing together in TikTok, in the TikTok editor, recording all that content before and going, great, I need this part here and this part, and I'm going to stitch them all together in this order, allows you to do that with a good storyboard like this. So planning out your shot scenes, shot selections, the audio, a script, and how to do that. Like I mentioned, call to action at the end of it. Always important to have a call to action in your longer form videos. As I mentioned as well, the thumbnail is the part that is going to stop your audience from scrolling past with your long form. So when people search for keywords, this is what shows up. When people see suggested videos in the right-hand pane, your thumbnail is what pops up. So making sure your images, color, text, graphics are all nice and consistent, but also visually catching. We did talk about this in the last masterclass. I won't wrap on too long about it, but make sure that it does grab your audience's attention as they are scrolling. A couple of examples there about how we build it out. Awesome. I'm going to wrap up very quickly because I am aware we've just hit pretty much 2 o'clock. So when it comes to some video best practice, have a search optimize, or have search terms in your title, because we do know people are searching for content generally. So that's just great video practice regardless. When it comes to making sure it's scroll stopping, like I said, it is quality over quantity, making sure that you get that audience retention from that first 2 or 3 seconds. Obviously, use your brand themes and colors, build that consistency. That way, as people are scrolling through their newsfeed, next time they see, maybe it's your style of intro, maybe it's the talent that you use, maybe it's the call out at the beginning, they see that and they go, awesome, I love their video content last time, boom, I want to watch it again. Make sure you shoot the appropriate orientation for your chosen channel. So obviously, if you are focusing on Instagram and TikTok and maybe even Facebook these days, thinking about that vertical side of things. But if you're focusing on other platforms, landscape. Have that hook, have that grab in that first 3 seconds. So when people are scrolling past, you've got them. They're like, okay, I'll buy it. What's interesting? And one of the best ways, like I mentioned, to do that is to be a consumer of your newsfeed as well. Scroll through the platform. And when you do get suckered into watching, not suckered, that's probably a bit of a mean term. When you do stop and pay attention to a video on Facebook or Instagram that you possibly might not have previously, just give yourself a think. Maybe it's an ad that appears in your Facebook feed. Just take a moment and go, wow, how did they grab me? What was it? What was it? The visual components? Was it the copy? Whatever it is. Incorporate into your larger marketing campaign. So that being said, there's always an approach to making sure that it's in line with your social media and marketing objectives. Because once again, I think for like the 10th time today, consistency, really the secret sauce. And obviously adding value without making any obvious sales pitches. Like we said, educate, entertain, and inspire. That is what will build that value. So team, hope you really enjoyed today's session. We looked at that beginning. So before you start, talked about things around that brand canvas and understanding repurposing as well. We talked about the recording and editing, some of the tools, content you need to get that content that will, I don't want to say jar, but stop your audience in their feed. Then we looked at short and long form video, focusing on that short form video and how to stop your audience scrolling past your content. Team, one thing I thoroughly encourage off the back of today is look at your feed with new eyes. Like I said, pay attention to content that grabs you as well. Learn from other videographers, graphic designers, etc. See what they're doing. There's also design school courses in Canva and all the other platforms as well, so I'd always encourage you to check that out. But follow accounts that have great content and look at downloading different apps and playing around with some of the suggestions that might have been made in this session. And lastly, I'd encourage you to, off the back of today's session, anything that I've said, anything someone else has said, even in the chat, it sort of made you go, oh, that's cool. I'd encourage you to jot down 1 or 2, maybe even 3 action points of things you want to put into place for your own organization when it comes to making your own scroll stopping video content. So write it down and think to yourself, what are 3 things that I can do in response to what we've learned today? Something that we've chatted about. Maybe it is, maybe it's dabbling in vertical video. Maybe it's following particular creators or producers, etc. And then also think about when will you next do that? Because it's great to have action points, but it's it's terrible if they just sit on a Trello board or on a in dot point form somewhere else. So when are you going to put that into place? Awesome team. Thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed today's session where we did look at scroll stopping video content. Absolutely connect in with us on the different platforms. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any particular questions. You can throw it into the chat box now. But otherwise, team, thank you so much. Hope you really enjoyed today's session and enjoy the rest of your Friday afternoon, morning, depending on where you've dialed in from, and have a great weekend. Take care, team. All the best.